My name is Cole Whitman. I'm 35 years old, and I've spent the last 8 years writing about places that most people drive through without stopping. Small towns, county seats, unincorporated communities with one gas station and a post office that closes at noon on Fridays. I write for a magazine out of New York that believes, correctly in my view, that the most interesting stories in America are happening in the places nobody thinks to look for them. I used to believe I did this work because I was good at it. Lately, I've been less sure about the because. My editor, a woman named Priya, who has been running the same magazine for 19 years, and who can tell when a piece is written by a person who cares versus a person who used to care, said something to me last spring that I haven't been able to put down. She said, "Cole, the last 3 pieces you've turned in are technically perfect and completely empty. Whatever you lost, you need to go find it before the next one." I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. She gave me the kind of look people give you when they know you're lying and have decided to let you lie until you figure out you're doing it. What I'd lost was this. I used to stop. I used to pull over in the middle of nowhere because the light was doing something I'd never seen it do, or because I saw a man sitting on a porch who looked like he had a story that had never been written down, and I'd go ask him. I used to spend 2 extra days in a town I'd already filed the piece about, because I'd met someone the last night who said one sentence that rewrote the whole story. I used to care more about getting it right than getting it done. Somewhere in the last year, I'd stopped stopping. The project was called Forgotten Main Street, 12 communities across 6 states, each chosen because it had survived something. Callaway Falls, population 1,840, was 4th on the list. It had lost its textile mill in 2009 and had been quietly, stubbornly rebuilding ever since. I always drive back roads. The landscape tells you things the interstate doesn't. Which fields get tended, where the old houses sit, whether anyone's keeping their porches up. I take photographs as I go. The engine started running wrong 40 minutes outside of Callaway Falls. I told myself it was the road. I told myself that for 15 minutes, and then the engine stopped. Power steering, radio, all of it. The truck rolled to a stop on the shoulder of a road, with nothing on either side but field and tree line, with the sun doing that specific Tennessee thing where it turns everything gold for 20 minutes before it quits entirely. I tried the engine twice. I tried my phone. 1 bar, briefly, then nothing. I sat in the cab for a moment and thought about Priya's look, about technically perfect and completely empty, about the 3 pieces that had come out right and landed wrong. And then I got my camera out and took photographs of the field to the west, which the light was treating better than it deserved, because it was the only thing I could think of that felt like the right response to being stuck in the middle of nowhere with no plan. For 40 minutes, nobody came. Then headlights appeared in the north. She didn't slow right away. The blue pickup, older than mine, better maintained, registered my truck on the shoulder, and then the brake lights came on. She was medium height, light brown hair in approximately 3 directions, flannel shirt over a t-shirt, work boots that had seen work, freckles across the bridge of her nose, the no-nonsense walk of someone who has somewhere to be and has temporarily redirected. She looked at my truck, then at me. "Engine?" she said. "Stopped," I said. She went to her truck, came back with a flashlight, and looked under my hood for 30 seconds. "Alternator?" she said. "Bad?" She looked at me over the hood with an expression that was not unkind, but was not going to pretend the question was a good one. "You're not driving this tonight. Callaway Falls is 22 miles. Walt Finney does towing. He can get the part tomorrow morning." She looked at me steadily. "You're going to be in Callaway Falls until at least tomorrow afternoon." "I was going there anyway," I said. "I'm a journalist, writing a piece about the town." Something shifted in her expression, something I didn't quite catch. "I know someone who can fix it," she said, "but it'll take until morning." She called Walt. He said 25 minutes. Then she knocked on her truck's back window and a boy appeared, 7 years old, short black hair, the serious expression of someone owed an explanation. "Noah, this is Cole. His truck broke down. We're waiting for Walt. Noah looked at me, then at the camera around my neck. Will you take a picture of the field before it gets dark? The light's doing something good. I looked. He was right. Something was still happening in the western sky above the tree line. I took 3 photographs. Noah watched with the attention of quality control. Good, he said. Then he got back in the truck. Your son? I said. Nephew, she said. He has opinions about light. Since he was 4. She put out her hand. Hazel Marsh. Cole Whitman. I know, you said. She almost smiled. Almost. Walt Finney arrived in 23 minutes. He confirmed the alternator, confirmed the part situation, confirmed the timeline. Tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. You got somewhere to stay? Walt asked. The Callaway Inn. Closed since March, Hazel said. There's a room at my mother's bed and breakfast. She charges for it. And she knows everything about this town and will tell you all of it whether you ask or not. She glanced at Walt. It's accurate, she said. Walt suppressed a laugh. We followed his tow truck into Callaway Falls, which appeared over a rise the way small towns do on back roads, all at once, a cluster of lights becoming a water tower and a church steeple and a main street. I watched it from Hazel's passenger seat. Noah ate a granola bar in the back. First time here? She said. First time. There's not much to find online. That's partly why I started writing about it, she said. Columnist. Greer County Courier. 6 years. She turned onto Main Street. Some storefronts renovated, some still waiting. A mural on a brick wall that looked recent and good. I covered the mill closure when it happened. I've been covering the recovery since. Can I read some of what you've written? I said. She glanced at me sideways. I'll think about it. Which, I would learn, was Hazel Marsh for yes. Ruth Marsh was exactly what her daughter had described. She showed me to a room on the 2nd floor of a Victorian house that had been in her family since the 1920s, and gave me a history of the house, the street, and the textile mill that somehow expanded into a history of the entire county, going back to the Depression. I took notes. She approved. Don't thank me, she said when I tried. It's a transaction. Same word as Hazel, same tone. Hazel came by at 8 with a folder. 15 years of columns, she said, setting it on the kitchen table next to my notebook. Organized chronologically. The closure pieces are at the front. You went home and printed these for me, I said. It's background for a story about my town, she said. Of course I printed them out. She poured herself coffee from Ruth's pot, not asking, the way she didn't ask for things in a house she'd been coming to her whole life. Then she told me what she actually thought the story was. Resilience implies you return to baseline, she said. Callaway Falls didn't return to baseline. It went somewhere different. The mill closing was a disaster. 40% unemployment overnight. People leaving. The school nearly losing its music program. All of that is true. She held her coffee. What's also true is that the disaster created space for things that couldn't have existed while the mill was running everything. The art center is in the old mill building now. The bakery is in an old laundromat. 3 businesses started by people who'd worked at the mill for years and never had time to try anything else. She set the mug down. I don't think Callaway Falls survived the mill closing. I think it became something it couldn't have been while the mill was still here. That's the story, I said. I know, she said. I've been trying to write it for 15 years. It's hard to write the story when you're still inside it. Noah looked up from his drawing. Aunt Hazel says you can't see a painting when your nose is touching the canvas. He's right, Hazel said, without looking at me. That's why you stopped, I said. On the road. She picked up her coffee. You were taking photographs of the field. Your truck was broken down, no signal, and you were taking photographs of the field. The light was good, I said. That's what Noah said. She almost smiled. People who take photographs of fields when their trucks are broken down are not people who just want a transaction. What kind of people are they? She looked at me. The green eyes in the kitchen light were the color of the fields outside Callaway Falls in September. The kind worth stopping for, she said.
I spent the next morning on Main Street with my camera and notebook. Hazel had given me a list over Ruth's breakfast table, written on a notepad page, torn out, handed to me like a dispatch from an editor. 12 people, in order of helpfulness. Start with Dottie at the bakery. Save Gerald at the hardware store for last. I started with Dottie, who was a cousin of Hazel's, which I was beginning to understand was simply how Callaway Falls worked. Everyone connected through some combination of family and 30 years of shared history. Dottie had worked at the mill for 11 years. When it closed, she'd spent 18 months figuring out what came next, and had finally, at 41, opened the bakery she'd been telling herself she'd open when she had time. "I wouldn't have done it if they hadn't closed the mill," she told me. "When the choice got made for me, I finally had to make my own." I talked to 7 people on Hazel's list. Each one was a different angle on the same story, loss and what grew in the space it left. I photographed the arts center in the old mill building, which was doing something extraordinary with the late morning light that I spent 40 minutes trying to catch properly. Hazel found me at the diner at 1 o'clock. She slid into the booth, picked up my notebook without asking, the way she didn't ask for coffee at her mother's house, and flipped through it. "You got the arts center," she said. 40 minutes on the light in the main hall," I said. "It does something specific in late morning." She set the notebook down. "When I first saw what they'd done with that building, I stood in that hall for 20 minutes. Not because it was beautiful, though it was, because I remembered what it looked like when the machines were in there." She looked at me. "That's the thing outsiders can't see. You see what it is now. I see what it replaced." "Tell me," I said, and she did. For 40 minutes over coffee, she talked about the mill the way you talk about something that shaped you, specifically without sentimentality. The sound the machines made, the particular rhythm of a shift town where everything, the grocery store hours, the diner's busy periods, the school schedule, organized itself around when people were coming off or going on. The way the whole place breathed on a shift change schedule for decades. And then it stopped. She described the silence on Main Street at 7 in the morning the week after closure as the strangest thing she'd ever heard. Not quiet exactly, but wrong. Like a sound that had been so constant it had stopped being heard, and now that it was gone, the absence of it was louder than the thing itself had ever been. She'd been 22 when the mill closed, just out of community college, working at a local paper, covering whatever needed covering. "I covered the closure," she said. "The announcement, the layoffs, the meetings where people stood up and said things I don't think I've ever heard people say before. Real things. Not the language people use when they're being careful, but what happens when the careful language runs out." She looked at her coffee. "I filed the piece, my editor printed it, and the next morning I woke up and understood that this was the story. Not just the closure, the whole thing. What came before it and what came after. I understood it was going to take a long time to tell, and that nobody was going to pay me to tell it." "So you stayed," I said. "So I stayed," she said. "I got the columnist job. I've been writing about this county for 15 years. My editor in Knoxville has offered me a better job 3 times, Nashville twice." She looked out the window. "I've said no every time." "Why?" I said. She was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I didn't push it. "My father," she said finally. "He used to say that every place has a story it doesn't know how to tell about itself. Not because the people don't know it, they live it. But because to tell a story, you need some distance and some proximity at the same time, and that's a hard combination to find." She looked at me. "He said somebody has to stay close enough to see it clearly and care enough to get it right." A pause. He spent 30 years doing that with his camera. I've been doing it with words. She straightened her mug on the table. I stay because I'm the one who stayed, and because he stayed, and because if I leave, something goes with me that doesn't go with anyone else. I looked at her across the diner table, at the specific weight of what she'd just said, laid out plainly, without apology or performance. Is that the only reason? I said. She looked at me. No, she said, but it's the one I'm comfortable saying to a journalist I've known for 18 hours. Noah appeared on the sidewalk outside the window, drawing pad under his arm. He spotted us through the glass and gave a serious wave.
He wants to be a photographer, Hazel said. Has since he was 5.
He has an eye, I said.
I know, she said. He gets it from his grandfather, my father. He died 4 years ago.
A pause, not the careful management I'd expected, but something rawer and more controlled at the same time, the way grief goes when it has had time to become weight instead of wound.
He was 61. He'd been photographing this town for 20 years, and he knew, I think he knew, he wasn't going to see everything he wanted to see. So he started writing things down. Not journalism, just notes. What the light looked like on the mill building in certain weather. What Main Street smelled like on a Saturday in October. Small things that nobody else was recording because nobody else thought they mattered enough.
Her voice didn't shake, but it went very quiet.
He gave me a folder of them the last time I saw him. Said, don't let the small things disappear. The small things are what the big things are made of.
She stopped, looked at the table. I didn't say anything. I just let it be there. Can I see some of his photographs? I said after a moment.
Why?
Because if it shaped you and Noah, it's part of what this town is. She was quiet for a long moment.
Dinner tonight, she said. I'll bring the albums.
The albums were on the kitchen table when I came down at 7. Ruth had made pot roast again. Noah was in his usual chair. Hazel arrived at 7:15, sat down, poured coffee, and opened the first album without preamble. Her father, Thomas Marsh, 61 when he died, had photographed Callaway Falls for 20 years. Not professionally, for himself and for the record. Every mill shift change for 15 years, the workers coming and going, faces he'd known since his own children were small. The particular quality of light on the water tower in different seasons. The for lease signs appearing that winter after the closure, documented one by one over weeks as the storefronts went dark. And then, slowly, the other photographs. A bakery opening in an old laundromat. An arts center taking shape in the mill building. A farmer's market where the shift changes used to be. He'd photographed the recovery the way you photograph something you believe in but are not certain about. There was a tentativeness in some of the early recovery photographs that the mill photographs didn't have. A man who had watched something for 15 years suddenly watching for something new, not sure yet what he was seeing. By the end of the last album, he was sure. Noah named people as I turned the pages. He'd been looking at these photographs his whole life, and he spoke the names the way you speak the names of people you feel like you know, even though you've only ever seen them in photographs. Ruth appeared in one from January 2010, standing on Main Street in a winter coat, looking at something outside the frame with an expression that was grief and something more complicated than grief.
She was looking at the mill building, Hazel said.
Ruth looked at the photograph without expression, the way you look at something you've looked at many times.
It's a good photograph, she said. He always got me right.
She paused.
I didn't know he was there that morning. I thought I was alone.
Another pause.
I think that's why he got it right. He always waited until you forgot he was watching.
I looked at Ruth across the table, at a woman in her late 60s who had lived her entire life in one place and watched that place change around her in ways that were both loss and something else. At the photograph of the younger version of her, standing in the cold, looking at a building she'd known her whole life. "What were you thinking?" I said, that morning. Ruth was quiet for a moment.
I was thinking about the women I worked with. I did 10 years at the mill before my knees went. 3 of them were standing in that parking lot the morning of the announcement. All 3 of them had been there longer than I had.
She looked at the photograph, not at me.
I was wondering where they were going to go, whether the place that had held them for all those years would still know how to hold them when it didn't have the mill to do it around.
"Did it?" I said.
"Mostly," she said. "Mostly it did."
She closed the album gently.
That's the honest answer. Not all of them, but mostly.
The last page of the last album. Main Street on a summer evening, the Arts Center lit up, the bakery glowing, the mural on the brick wall. The date stamp read July 12th, 3 months before Thomas Marsh died.
"He saw it," I said. "He made sure to," Hazel said. She said it quietly, and something in her voice told me she meant more than the photograph, that there had been a conversation, a decision, a deliberate act of witnessing before it was too late. He drove himself to town that evening. He wasn't driving much anymore by then, but he had someone take him, and he walked Main Street from one end to the other with his camera, and he came home and he showed me the photographs, and he said, "Write this down too, Hazel. Write down that it worked." She looked at the photograph. "I haven't been able to write that piece yet," she said. "The one where it worked. I keep starting it." "Why can't you finish it?" I said. She looked at me across the kitchen table. In the lamplight, her green eyes were wet at the edges in a way she was choosing not to acknowledge. "Because he's not here to read it," she said. "And I don't know how to write it for anyone else yet." The kitchen was very quiet for a moment. Noah looked at the photograph. He said it was never about the mill. It was about the people. He said it simply, the way you say something you were told and kept. Hazel looked at her nephew for a long moment. Something in her face settled, the specific settling of someone who has just been given what they needed from an unexpected direction. "Are you going to get it right?" she said to me. "I'm going to try," I said. "You're going to tell me if I don't." "That's correct," she said. "Then between us we'll probably get it right." Something moved across her face. Not quite a smile. Something quieter. The thing a smile is made of. The thing that comes before it, and is more honest. "Between us," she said. Ruth refilled everyone's coffee without being asked, and said nothing, which was its own kind of answer to something nobody had asked out loud. Walt Finney called at 2 the next afternoon to say the truck would be ready at 4. He'd already called Hazel, which I was no longer surprised by. I called her. "One more thing," I said. "The mill building. Late afternoon light." 3:30, she said. "Meet me there." She was already there when I arrived, standing in the main hall with the late afternoon light finally doing what I'd been trying to catch all morning. She wasn't looking at the light. She was looking at something I couldn't see, the way she looked at things that had replaced other things. I raised the camera. I took the photograph. She heard the shutter, turned. "Did you get it?" I looked at the screen, her in the foreground, the old mill windows doing their specific late afternoon work behind her, and on her face the expression I'd seen in the diner and over the photograph albums, something holding the past and the present in the same moment, not choosing between them, carrying both. "I got it," I said. She looked at the screen, looked at herself in it for a long moment, in the particular way people look at photographs where they've been caught being real instead of posed. "His photograph," she said quietly. "My words. Noah's eye." She looked up at me. "And a journalist who photographs fields when his truck breaks down." I put the camera down. "Hazel?" I said. "Yeah." When I left New York for this project, my editor told me the last 3 pieces I'd turned in were technically perfect and completely empty. She said I'd lost something and I needed to go find it. I looked at the mill windows, at the light going the way September light goes. I didn't know what she meant when she said it. I thought she was wrong. A pause. She wasn't wrong. Hazel looked at me. "What did you lose?" she said. "Stopping," I said. I stopped stopping. I stopped pulling over for the light. I stopped staying an extra day because someone said something in the last hour that rewrote everything. I looked at the camera in my hands. I started treating the work like something to get done instead of something to get right. She was quiet for a moment. "Why?" she said. I thought about it honestly, the way the mill building and the late afternoon and the specific quality of what she'd told me about her father made you think honestly about things. "Because getting it right requires you to care," I said. "And caring requires you to be somewhere fully, and I hadn't been fully anywhere in a long time." Hazel looked at the mill windows, at the light going. "I'm going to need a local source," I said. "Someone who's covered this for 15 years. Someone who will tell me when I get it wrong." "I'm not easy to work with," she said. "I know," I said. "I have opinions about how things should be written. Strong ones." "I'm counting on it," I said. "You're going to have to come back," she said. "One overnight isn't enough." "I know," I said. "So you're going to come back?" "I am," I said. "Not just for the story," she said. I looked at her across the old mill floor, with the late September light doing its last work through the windows her father had photographed 100 times. "No," I said. "Not just for the story." She nodded. Once, decisively, the way she did everything, like the decision had been made, and there was no point in making a production of it. 4 o'clock, she said. "I'll drive you to Walt's." She walked out. I stood in the light for another minute, at the space where she'd been standing, at the windows, at a building that had been one thing for a long time, and was now something else, and was better for it, and still carried everything it had been, the way you carry things that have made you. I took one more photograph. Then I followed her out into Callaway Falls, which was going to be the best thing I'd written in 8 years, and which was, I was only beginning to understand, also going to be the reason I finally stopped moving long enough to stay somewhere. Walt Finney had the truck ready at 4 o'clock exactly. Noah was there. He looked at the truck, then at me, then at Hazel, in the sequence of a child running a final evaluation. "Are you coming back?" he said, direct, unhurried, the question of someone who has decided not to waste time on indirection. "Yes," I said. He considered this with the seriousness he brought to everything. Then he held out his hand, the formal handshake of a 7-year-old who has decided something is official and intends to make it so. I crouched down and shook it. "Okay," he said. "I'll show you where the light's good in winter. It's different from September. Dad says it goes blue before it goes gold, but Aunt Hazel says it depends on the clouds." He looked at Hazel. "We've been disagreeing about it for 2 years." "I'm right," Hazel said. "We'll let Cole decide," Noah said, with the satisfaction of someone who has just created a tiebreaker situation. Then he went to Hazel's truck. I looked at Hazel. "He's a good judge," she said. "So are you," I said. She looked at me for a moment with those eyes that were the color of the fields outside this town in September, and in them was everything she'd said, and everything she hadn't said, and the particular weight of a person who has been in one place long enough to know exactly what she's giving you when she lets you into it. Then she got in her truck. I got in mine. I drove out of Callaway Falls on the same back road I'd driven in on. Same fields. Different light. Evening now. The gold already going. The blue coming in. I had my notebook open on the passenger seat, and I wasn't writing in it, because I was too busy trying to hold on to everything at once. The way you do when you know you're going to need to write about something that happened to you before you had a chance to become the kind of person who could handle it happening. I pulled over at the place where the truck had stopped. I sat there for a minute. Just sat. Then I got out and took a photograph of the field, which in the evening light was doing something entirely different from what it had done when I'd taken the first photographs 2 days ago. Quieter, cooler, the day finishing its business without the drama of a sunset. Good, I thought. Different is good. Different means you were paying attention to both. I got back in the truck. I drove on. And for the first time in a year that had felt like driving with one eye closed, I was completely, entirely, fully looking at the road in front of me.